The tension in the maternity ward had been building since early morning, thick enough to feel with every breath. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, nurses moved in and out with professional calm, and somewhere down the hall a newborn cried, a fragile sound full of life. But inside room 214, there was no joy. Only anger, pride, and a power struggle that had been simmering for years finally boiling over at the worst possible moment. Alina lay in the hospital bed, pale and exhausted, her body still trembling from hours of labor. Her newborn son slept beside her in a clear bassinet, wrapped tightly in a blue blanket. She hadn't even had time to fully process that she was a mother now. The pain, the fear, the overwhelming rush of emotion, it all blurred together. What she did understand, with painful clarity, was the cold voice standing at the foot of her bed. "I told you from the beginning," her mother-in-law said sharply, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. "You don't belong in this family. And now that the baby is born, there's no reason for you to stay." Alina tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through her body. "This is my child," she said quietly. "You can't just throw me out." Her mother-in-law scoffed. "Don't act innocent. My son made a mistake marrying you. And now you think a baby changes everything. Pack your things. As soon as the doctor signs the papers, you're leaving." The words hit harder than the contractions ever had. Alina glanced toward the door, hoping, praying, that someone would step in. Her husband was nowhere to be seen. He had left earlier, saying he needed air, and hadn't returned. In that moment, she felt utterly abandoned. The older woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Don't make a scene. Nurses don't need to hear family problems. You'll leave quietly, and I'll take care of my grandson." Tears welled in Alina's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She reached instinctively for the bassinet, placing a protective hand on the edge. "You're not taking him from me." Before the argument could escalate further, the door opened. At first, neither of them turned. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. Then a familiar, unmistakable voice filled the room. "That's enough." Alina's mother-in-law froze. Her face drained of color as she turned around. Standing in the doorway was a man she never expected to see there, well-dressed, calm, and radiating authority. The baby's grandfather, a man who rarely involved himself in family conflicts and whose silence had always been mistaken for agreement. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "I heard everything," he said evenly. The older woman stammered. "You weren't supposed to be here." "I thought." "You thought wrong," he interrupted. His gaze shifted to Alina, softening immediately. "Are you all right?" Alina nodded, barely able to speak. He turned back to his wife, his voice firm now. "You will leave this room. Right now." "But this is my grandson," she protested. "And this," he replied coldly, "is his mother. And as long as I'm alive, no one will treat her like this." The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. For the first time, the woman had nothing to say. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then stormed past him without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. Alina finally broke down, covering her face as quiet sobs shook her body. The man moved closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone," he said. "And you never will be again." While that family drama unfolded behind hospital walls, a different kind of confrontation was taking place hundreds of miles away, one that would soon dominate headlines and social media feeds. What was supposed to be a relaxed, friendly appearance on the Kelly Clarkson show had taken a sharp and unexpected turn. Miranda Lambert, country music superstar known for her unapologetic honesty, sat across from Kelly Clarkson, smiling at first, laughing, exchanging stories about music and life. The audience was warm, the mood light. Then the conversation shifted. Kelly asked a question that seemed harmless enough, touching on artistic choices and public expectations. Miranda's smile tightened. She answered carefully at first, but there was an edge in her voice that hadn't been there before. Kelly pressed a bit further, clearly not intending to provoke, but something had already been triggered. "You know," Miranda said, leaning forward, "people love to tell women how they should behave, how they should sound, how they should lie. And I'm tired of it." Kelly nodded, attempting to empathize. "I get that, but don't you think?" "No," Miranda cut in, her tone sharp now. "That's the problem. Everyone always thinks they know better." The room shifted. The band went quiet. The audience exchanged glances. Kelly tried to steer the conversation back, her voice calm. I'm not attacking you. I'm just asking. Miranda shook her head, standing up abruptly. I'm not doing this. Not today. There was a stunned pause as she removed her microphone and placed it on the chair. Cameras scrambled, producers whispered frantically off stage. Kelly stood as well, clearly surprised. Miranda, wait. But Miranda was already walking off set, heels clicking sharply against the floor. She didn't look back. Within minutes, clips of the moment flooded social media. Fans took sides instantly. Some praised Miranda for standing her ground, calling her brave and authentic. Others criticized her, accusing her of overreacting and disrespecting the host. Back in the maternity ward, Alina cradled her baby, unaware of the media storm brewing elsewhere. For her, the world had narrowed down to one small, perfect face and the steady rhythm of his breathing. The chaos, the cruelty, the fear, it all felt distant now. Her husband finally returned later that evening, eyes red, voice shaking with regret. He apologized, stumbling over his words, promising things would change. Alina listened quietly, her gaze never leaving her son. Some confrontations happen under bright studio lights, broadcast to millions. Others unfold in hushed hospital rooms, witnessed by only a few. But they share something in common: the moment when someone says, enough, and refuses to be pushed any further. Whether it's a new mother protecting her child or an artist walking away from a conversation that crossed a line, there are times when silence is no longer an option, and walking away becomes the most powerful statement of all. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, a strange mix that clung to the air and made everything feel unreal. Outside the maternity ward, families whispered, nurses exchanged quick updates, and somewhere a television murmured softly. Inside one room, however, the calm shattered into something sharp and unforgettable. The door slammed shut, and the sound echoed like a verdict. You've stayed long enough, the woman said coldly, her heels clicking against the tile as she paced the room. As soon as you're discharged, you're leaving. The young mother lay propped up against white pillows, her face drained of color not only from childbirth but from the cruelty in those words. Hours earlier, she had screamed in pain, clutched at bedrails, and prayed just to survive the delivery. Now she was being told she had no place here, no home, no family, no right to stay. I just gave birth, she whispered. I can barely stand. That's not my problem, the mother-in-law snapped. My son will raise the child properly. You were a mistake from the start. The baby stirred in the bassinet, letting out a tiny sound that pierced the tension like a needle. Instinctively, the young woman reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed the blanket. Her heart pounded with fear, not for herself, but for the fragile life beside her. You can hate me, she said, gathering what little strength she had left, but you will not take my child. The older woman laughed, a short, bitter sound. You really think you have a choice? You have nothing. No money, no support, and clearly no husband. He hasn't even come back, has he? The silence answered for her. Before the young mother could respond, the door creaked open again. Footsteps entered the room, slow, heavy, deliberate. The mother-in-law turned, irritation already forming on her face, prepared to scold a nurse for interrupting. Instead, she stopped breathing. A man stood there, tall and composed, his expression unreadable. He had not been expected. He was not supposed to be here. And yet, there he was, taking in every detail of the scene with quiet intensity. What is going on? He asked. The mother-in-law's confidence faltered. You shouldn't interfere. This is family business. Exactly, he replied. Which is why I am interfering. He stepped closer, his gaze shifting briefly to the exhausted woman on the bed, then to the newborn. Something hardened in his eyes. I heard you telling her to leave. She's unstable, his wife argued quickly. She's not fit. Enough, he said, raising his voice just enough to stop her. You will not speak another word like that in this room. For a moment, it felt as though the world had tilted. The woman who had controlled every family gathering, every decision, every argument, stood speechless. No one had ever challenged her like this before. This child, the man continued, needs his mother. And his mother needs rest, safety, and respect. If anyone is leaving, it's you. The mother-in-law's mouth opened, then closed again. Her face flushed with anger and humiliation, but she said nothing. She grabbed her purse, turned sharply, and walked out without another word. The door shut softly behind her. The young mother finally allowed herself to cry, not from fear this time, but from relief. The man moved closer, his voice gentle now. "You're safe," he said. "I promise you that." While that private battle ended in a quiet victory, another confrontation was playing out in a place where nothing stayed private for long. Bright lights, applause, and cheerful music filled the studio of the Kelly Clarkson show. Miranda Lambert walked out to roaring cheers, smiling and waving as she took her seat. She looked relaxed, confident, every bit the star fans adored. Kelly greeted her warmly, and for a while, everything unfolded exactly as planned. They talked about music, touring, and life in the spotlight. Miranda joked, the audience laughed, and the atmosphere felt easy. But beneath the surface, something subtle shifted as the questions turned more personal. Kelly asked about criticism, about public opinion, expectations, and the pressure to constantly reinvent oneself. Miranda's smile faded just slightly. "I've spent my whole career being told who I should be," she said carefully. "And I'm done listening." Kelly nodded, trying to keep the tone light. "But don't you think feedback can sometimes?" "That's the thing," Miranda interrupted. "It's never, sometimes. It's constant. And it's exhausting." The audience grew quiet. Cameras zoomed in, catching the tightness in Miranda's jaw. Kelly tried to clarify, her voice calm, professional. "I'm not saying you owe anyone anything. I'm just asking how you." Miranda stood up. The movement was sudden, decisive. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "I'm not going to sit here and defend my existence," Miranda said, her voice steady but unmistakably angry. "I've worked too hard for that." She removed her microphone and placed it neatly on the chair. Kelly rose as well, clearly caught off guard. "Miranda, we're just talking." "No," Miranda replied, shaking her head. "You're talking. I'm done." And with that, she walked off the stage, disappearing behind the curtain as the studio fell into stunned silence. Within minutes, the clip spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed about drama, arguments, and walkouts. Fans debated fiercely, some applauding her for refusing to be cornered, others accusing her of being overly sensitive. Back at the hospital, the young mother held her baby close, unaware of trending hashtags or viral videos. For her, the most important moment had already passed, the moment someone finally stood up for her when she could not stand at all. Her husband arrived late that night, guilt written all over his face. He tried to explain, to apologize, to promise change. She listened quietly, her eyes focused on the small rise and fall of her child's chest. She knew now that strength didn't always come from the people you expected. Sometimes it arrived unexpectedly, at the exact moment you needed it most. In different places, under very different lights, two women faced moments that demanded a choice. One chose to protect her child against quiet cruelty. The other chose to protect her voice against public pressure. Both moments were raw, imperfect, and deeply human. And in both cases, walking away, or forcing someone else to, was not an act of weakness, but a declaration that some lines, once crossed, can never be ignored again.